Hello, world, and welcome to the CEWIT podcast. My name is Chris Lange. I'm the engineering manager here at CEWIT, and today I am joined by Alex Jaimes, chief scientist at SVP at Dataminr. How are you doing today, Alex?
Pretty good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us here at the conference and also here at the podcast. So I would just like to start us off with a little bit, if you want to introduce yourself to our audience, a little bit about your role and your expertise.
Yeah, so I'm Alex Jaimes. I'm the chief scientist and SVP of AI at Dataminr, and I manage the teams that build the models that power what our company does. So I have scientists, data scientists, AI engineers, and we basically ingest public data sources, find events in those data sources, and then send out alerts about those events. And the events themselves range from small traffic accidents all the way up to political statements, market moves, et cetera, et cetera. So a big chunk of that is emergency response. Another chunk of it is more for corporate security, so events that impact security of companies, cyber, and then anything that's breaking news. That's basically it.
Great. Yeah, thank you. It's so interesting. And there are so many different technologies that are playing a role in the world today. And the energy today at the conference, as we learn about from your speaking and from all the other panelists that we have today, it's just been very invigorating to get into that topic. So one question I would have for you is if you think that there are any myths or misunderstandings, misconceptions that you think that people have for, your area of expertise.
Well, I mean, in my case, it's easy because it's AI, so we could spend the next 2 or 3 weeks just talking about
really big deep dive in the podcast.
Yeah, all of the things that people think about AI that it's not. On one hand, people believe that it's magic and you can do everything with AI, and on the other hand, people think that you can't do anything with AI,
right? Because
it's not real. So there's a very wide range of things there, and I think because it's such an important technology. Mm-hmm. And it is going to impact pretty much everything we do. It is important for people to better understand what it is, how it works, at least at a basic level.
Right.
But yeah, there are a lot of misunderstandings.
Yeah, there's so many things with these new and novel technologies where people see it, but without really taking that deep dive, they might not understand fully how everything is kind of working. So I think that's really interesting. And for our CEWIT conference, the themes today are how can we build a safer, more sustainable and energy and environmentally friendly future. So from your perspective, what does that future look like and what kind of technologies do you think are involved in building that future?
So I am very bullish on AI and the opportunities that it brings because it makes things more efficient and therefore it allows a lot of things to scale at a much lower cost. And in general, what that does is that it increases access. And so it makes it a lot easier for many people to have access to things that they maybe didn't have before. Personalized tutoring in the case of education, better healthcare, access to information, safety. I mean, there are so many areas. There are potential bad uses of the technology as well. Mm-hmm. But I think the good uses outnumber the bad uses of the technology. And I think the future is very bright in that sense. But as I said earlier, I think one of the key parts of that is for everyone to better understand how to use these tools so they can leverage them and be part of that big change.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point that because this is technology that impacts so many different people and is involved, across even today at the conference, we have AI applications in healthcare. We have AI that's involved with forecasting for climate. And there's so many different areas that this can plug in the same sense that is impacting so many people. And it's also offering an opportunity for them to get involved and to learn more about that technology, to make sure that to the extent that they want to dive in and really understand it to a deep level, they have that opportunity. So if you were going to give advice to someone, whether that's a student or if that's somebody who is maybe working in a different field right now, but would love to get involved in that, what kind of advice would you give to that person?
I think the advice would be to learn the basics and use the technologies that's out there. Experiment with it, play with it.
Get the hands-on experience.
Get the hands-on experience. If you're working in computer science or related fields, get your hands dirty and actually build some of it, because that's how you really get to understand what it does. But even if you're not, even if you're just a consumer, question the information that's coming in front of you and that you're getting, and understand the dynamics behind how it's presented, how it's selected, and why you're getting it, and realize that there's a lot going on behind the scenes in in what you're seing that goes beyond, just, in the old times, you would buy a newspaper and that's it. And of course, there's a lot that goes into what's written in the newspaper. But today and in the future, as more and more of that information becomes personalized, I think we have to be more critical about what we consume. It's almost like, the way we eat. We ideally would pay more attention to what we eat, right? And I think it's the same with anything that we consume and the tools that we use.
And also kind of, to go with the food analogy of like the farm to table experience where from the beginning, what are the sources that are being used for your food to get it to your table, but also with our data, right? So what type of data are these models being trained on? What are the sources that are, being used to generate these outcomes? So we have to take a look both at the outcome side of things, what's being generated, but also what's going into. I think that's, very interesting and something that, a lot of people are still learning about as they're experiencing the systems. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think at a very minimum, just questioning what you're seeing and, looking at the source of the information and whether what you're seeing contradicts any common knowledge and so on and so forth. In other words, it's more about critical thinking.
Right.
I think that's going to be a very key skill in the future.
For sure.
And part of that is learning to use the tools, because when you use the tools, you realize that maybe things are not what you see at face value, and maybe what you're getting is not the full picture.
Right.
But you only get that if you learn how to use it.
And if you understand kind of what you're looking at.
Right.
Right. So, of course, one of the common terms that's entered all of our vocabularies is ChatGPT and these large language models. It's something that has very much had been an evolving technology that's been worked on for years now, but has very much entered the collective global consciousness. So I was just wondering, from your perspective, how do you see the role of these different AI and ML models, such as the LLMs, really interacting with us? I guess from what we were talking about, a little bit of that stewardship and that awareness of what we're looking at. But do you see that this is technology that's kind of here to stay and is going to be impacting us moving forward?
Yeah, I think this is the biggest technological change that we've seen in human history. I think the impact is huge. I think in some industries it's going to be very, very fast, while in others it's going to take a little bit more time and be slower. But if we look forward 10, 20 years, I think there isn't going to be any industry that's not heavily impacted by some of these technologies. And what something like ChatGPT has done is really made it popular and made it accessible in ways that it wasn't before. And that opens up the possibilities, because people start seeing what can be done with the technologies, right?
Bringing it to the forefront of what they're looking at and how it can be applied for whatever their use case is, how they can take a look at that. Maybe it's something they weren't looking at before, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I do just want to thank you again for being part of our CEWIT conference as a speaker and then joining us again for the podcast. So thank you. And thank you to the audience for joining us here on our podcast episode. And with that, thanks again.
Thank you for having me at the conference and at the podcast.
Of course.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.